The town of Crestwood shimmered with wealth and prestige, its cobblestone streets lined with boutique shops and manicured gardens. On this crisp autumn evening, the Lumière restaurant, a beacon of sophistication, glowed under golden chandeliers, hosting the annual Financial Elite Gala. The air buzzed with the clink of champagne flutes and the hum of high society entrepreneurs, investors, and influencers mingling in a dance of power and ambition. At the heart of it all strode James Whitaker, a 38-year-old white American businessman, his sharp navy suit accentuating his tall frame and pale complexion. His sandy blonde hair was neatly combed, and his blue eyes scanned the room with the confidence of a man who owned every space he entered. James, a rising star in the investment world, saw the gala as a stage to solidify his reputation. At his side was Lauren Mitchell, a 29-year-old white American advertising executive, her fair skin glowing under the soft lights, her auburn curls cascading over a sleek emerald dress. Lauren thrived in the spotlight, her laughter magnetic as she leaned into James, whispering, "This crowd will be buzzing about us all night." Her hazel eyes sparkled with mischief, and James smirked, adjusting his cufflinks. "About me, you mean?" He teased, his voice low and playful. Lauren nudged his arm, feigning annoyance. Always so humble, she quipped, her smile dazzling the photographers circling them. Servers glided through the crowd, offering trays of sparkling champagne, as James exchanged calculated pleasantries with investors. His handshake firm, his words precise. Everything was unfolding perfectly until his gaze drifted to a central table near the stage. His breath caught and his broad shoulders tensed. There, commanding the room with an effortless grace, sat Amara Brooks, his 36-year-old ex-wife, a Black American woman whose rich, deep brown skin glowed against her sapphire dress. Her tightly coiled hair, styled in an elegant updo, framed her poised features, and her dark eyes sparkled with a confidence James didn't recognize. At 5'7", Amara carried herself with a regal air, her presence drawing admiring glances from the business people around her. James froze his champagne flute, hovering mid-air. Amara was no longer the quiet, supportive wife he'd left 3 years ago. She was a force radiant and unattainable. She laughed at something a guest said, her voice warm and melodic, and the sound hit James like a forgotten memory. Lauren, sensing his shift, followed his gaze. "Who's that?" she asked, her tone sharp but curious, her fair cheeks flushing slightly. James swallowed his throat dry. "Amara," he said barely above a whisper. "My ex-wife." Lauren's perfectly arched brow lifted, her eyes narrowing as she assessed Amara's elegance. "She doesn't look like the divorce slowed her down," she remarked, her voice laced with admiration and challenge. The room seemed to shrink, the chatter fading into a dull hum as James watched Amara. She leaned forward, engaging a group of investors with a story, with them nodding in awe. Her hands moved gracefully, emphasizing her points, and her confident, not forced smile made something twist in James's chest. He remembered her as the woman who once shaped her life around his, waiting for his approval. But this, Amara, belonged to no one. She was a stranger, and that realization stung more than he expected. An event organizer, a wiry man in his 50s, approached with a beaming smile. "Mr. Whitaker, so glad you could join us. We're seating the key guests now. Please follow me." James nodded, forcing a smile, but his heart raced as he and Lauren were led directly to Amara's table. Fate or cruel coincidence? He wondered, his palms sweating. Lauren's hand tightened on his arm, her nails pressing lightly against his sleeve as they sat across from Amara. The air thickened with unspoken tension. Amara glanced up, her dark eyes meeting James's without a flicker of surprise. "James," she said, her voice smooth and measured. "What a surprise to see you here." Her lips curved into a polite smile, but her gaze held a quiet strength that exposed him. "I didn't know you'd be among the guests," James replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He adjusted his tie, a nervous habit as Amara tilted her head slightly. "I imagine not," she said, unhurried. "The committee invited me. I've been consulting on their strategic campaigns." Her words landed like a revelation. James blinked, caught off guard. Amara, a consultant for the gala. He had no idea she'd climbed so high in the financial world. Lauren's smile tightened, her green eyes flicking between them, sensing a history she couldn't fully grasp. The table conversation resumed, but James's mind was elsewhere. Amara's presence was a mirror, reflecting a past he'd buried, and a present he couldn't ignore. What had she become in the years since their divorce? And why did her newfound strength unsettle him so deeply? As the first course was served, he stole another glance at her, her poise unshaken, her laughter genuine. This began a night that would unravel everything he thought he knew. What do you think will happen next? Will James face his past, or will Amara's strength steal the spotlight? Drop your predictions in the comments below. And if you're loving this drama, hit that like button to keep the story alive. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for more tales of love and redemption. You won't want to miss what's coming. The Lumière restaurant pulsed with the energy of Crestwood's elite, its crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over polished mahogany tables. The Financial Elite Gala was in full swing with laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. James Whitaker sat rigidly at the main table, his navy suit now constrictive as if it could barely contain the storm brewing inside him. Across from him, Amara Brooks radiated a quiet power, her sapphire dress catching the light as she leaned forward, engaging a group of investors with a story that drew nods and smiles. Her tightly coiled hair, swept into an elegant updo, framed her poised expression, and her dark eyes sparkled with confidence, making James's chest tighten. Lauren Mitchell beside him sipped her champagne, her auburn curls bouncing slightly as she tilted her head to observe Amara. "She's got their attention," Lauren murmured, her hazel eyes narrowing with curiosity and unease. "What's her deal?" James forced a neutral smile, his fingers drumming lightly on the tablecloth. "She's in marketing now," he said, his voice low, as if testing the words and consulting for events like this. The truth felt foreign on his tongue. Amara, the woman he'd once dismissed as a dreamer, was now a force in the financial world, a world he thought he owned. Amara's conversation with the investors flowed effortlessly. She said every market has a heartbeat, and her voice is smooth and commanding. Behind the numbers are stories, ambitions, risks, dreams. I help brands weave those into narratives people can't ignore. A silver-haired executive, his cufflinks glinting, leaned forward. "Your campaign for Pinnacle Funds was brilliant, Amara, turning dry statistics into a story of legacy. That's game-changing." She smiled modestly, her fingers brushing the stem of her wine glass. "Thank you. It's about finding the human element in the data." James's jaw tightened. He remembered Amara's late-night scribbles, her passion for writing stories she hoped to publish. He'd called them fantasies, urging her to focus on his career instead. Here she was, using that same passion to reshape an industry. The irony stung. Lauren, sensing his distraction, leaned closer, her emerald dress rustling. "You're quiet," she said, her tone playful, but edged with suspicion. "Is it weird seeing her like this?" James shrugged, forcing a casual air. "Just surprised, that's all." But his eyes betrayed him, lingering on Amara's effortless grace. The tension at the table thickened as the first course, seared scallops, drizzled with truffle oil, arrived. Amara glanced at James, her gaze steady, almost amused. "Enjoying the evening, James?" she asked, her voice light, but carrying a subtle challenge. He cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. "It's a good crowd," he replied, dodging her eyes. She tilted her head, her smile faint but sharp. "It is. Plenty of new faces, new stories." The words hung between them, a reminder of the distance time had carved. A portly investor, his cheeks flushed from wine, chimed in. "Amara, your work's the talk of the circuit. How'd you pivot from writing to this?" Amara's smile softened, but her eyes held a flicker of resilience. "Life has a way of teaching you to adapt," she said. "I found a niche where stories meet strategy." And it clicked. James felt a pang. He knew the subtext her adaptation was born from the wreckage of their marriage, from the years she'd spent rebuilding herself after he'd dismissed her dreams. Lauren, picking up on the undercurrent, set her fork down with a delicate clink. "So, Amara, are you in finance now too?" Her tone was polite, but her smile was tight, a silent claim on James. Amara met her gaze unfazed. "Not quite," she said, her voice smooth as velvet. "I don't crunch numbers. I shape the stories that make those numbers matter." The table chuckled, but James felt the weight of her words. She wasn't just succeeding, but thriving in a way he'd never imagined possible. As the conversation shifted to market trends, James's mind wandered. He stole glances at Amara, noting how she commanded attention without trying, and how her laughter was genuine, not performative. He remembered their marriage, her waiting up late, her eyes dimming each time he brushed off her ambitions. Now, she was a stranger, her confidence mirroring his failures. Lauren's hand grazed his, pulling him back. "You're staring," she whispered, her voice sharp. He forced a smile, but his heart wasn't in it. The evening's MC took the stage, announcing the first award, but James barely heard. Amara's presence was a gravitational pull, forcing him to confront a truth he'd buried. She had moved on, not just from him, but into a life where she shone brighter than ever. He sipped his wine, the bitterness lingering on his tongue. What had she endured to become this woman? And why did her strength make him feel so small? The gala was far from over, and James knew this night would unravel more than his carefully curated image. The Lumière restaurant's opulent dining hall thrummed with the energy of the Financial Elite Gala, its chandeliers casting prisms of light across the faces of Crestwood's power players. At the main table, James Whitaker sat rigidly, his navy suit crisp, but his composure fraying. His sandy blonde hair caught the glow of the candles, but his blue eyes were fixed on Amara Brooks, who sat across from him, her sapphire dress shimmering as she leaned into a conversation with a group of investors. Her tightly coiled hair, swept into an elegant updo, framed her serene expression, and her dark eyes gleamed with a quiet authority that made James's stomach churn. Amara's warm and measured voice carried over the table as she responded to a question from a bespectacled executive. "The key to impactful branding," she said, "is authenticity. People don't trust numbers alone. They trust the story behind them, why a company exists, what it stands for." The executive nodded, scribbling a note. "Your work with Horizon Capital proved that," he said. "Their rebrand doubled investor interest. How do you find those stories?" Amara's smile was subtle and confident when listening. "Every balance sheet has a pulse, if you know where to look." James's fingers tightened around his fork, the seared scallops on his plate untouched. He knew Amara's knack for storytelling. She'd once filled notebooks with tales she dreamed of publishing, but he'd never imagined her wielding it in his world. Her success felt like a rebuke, a reminder of the ambitions he'd dismissed during their marriage. Lauren Mitchell, seated beside him, swirled her wine glass, her auburn curls brushing her emerald dress as she studied Amara with a guarded smile. She's good, Lauren whispered, her hazel eyes flicking to James. You didn't mention she was this good. Her tone was light, but her grip on the glass betrayed a flicker of insecurity. The table conversation shifted, but Amara's presence dominated. A woman in a silver gown, her earrings dangling, leaned toward Amara. Your keynote at the Finance Summit was inspiring, she said. You made data feel human. Are you speaking at next year's event? Amara tilted her head, considering. If they ask, I might. I'm focused on a new project helping startups craft narratives competing with the big players. The table murmured in approval, and James felt a pang. Startups. Keynotes. This wasn't the Amara he'd known, the one who'd shaped her life around his schedule. Sensing the shift in James's mood, Lauren set her glass down with a delicate clink. So Amara said, her voice bright but edged. You're practically a finance guru now. Her smile was a challenge, a subtle claim on James's attention. Amara met her gaze unfazed, her dark eyes steady. Not a guru, she said, her tone smooth as silk. I help people see the story in the numbers. It's less about finance and more about connection. The response was polite, but pointed, and Lauren's smile faltered, her cheeks flushing slightly. James cleared his throat, desperate to break the tension. He said, it sounds like you've carved out a niche, and his voice was tighter than intended. Amara's eyes flicked to him, her expression unreadable. I had to. She said, her words soft, but waited. Life doesn't wait for you to catch up. The table fell quiet for a moment, the subtext hanging heavy. James knew she wasn't just talking about her career. He shifted in his seat, his tie suddenly feeling like a noose. A portly investor, oblivious to the undercurrent, chimed in. Amara, your firm is disrupting the market. I heard you're mentoring young marketers too. Amara nodded, her smile genuine. Yes, I started a program for underrepresented talent. It's my way of paying it forward. James's jaw clenched. Mentoring. She was building a legacy while he'd spent years chasing accolades that now felt hollow. He glanced at her, noting the ease in her posture and the way she commanded respect without demanding it. She was a stranger, and that realization cut deeper than he expected. Lauren leaned closer to James, her voice a whisper. You're acting like she's the only one at this table. Her tone was sharp, her hazel eyes searching his face. James forced a smile, but his heart wasn't in it. Just catching up, he murmured. But his eyes drifted back to Amara. She was laughing now, her head tilted back, the sound warm and unguarded. It was a laugh he hadn't heard in years, and it stirred a memory he'd buried a night early in their marriage when they danced in their kitchen, her laughter filling the room. The MC's voice boomed, announcing the next award, but James barely registered it. Amara's transformation was a mirror reflecting his shortcomings. He'd built an empire, but at what cost? Lauren's hand grazed his, pulling him back, but her touch felt distant. Amara glanced at him, her dark eyes catching his for a fleeting moment. Her smile was polite, but her gaze held a quiet challenge, as if daring him to see her for the first time. James swallowed, his pulse quickening. This night was far from over, and the tension between them was only beginning to unravel. The Lumière restaurant faded from James Whitaker's mind as the gala's chatter dissolved into a distant hum. The clink of glasses and the glow of chandeliers blurred, replaced by a memory that pulled him back 6 years to a time when he and Amara Brooks were still bound by a marriage that promised forever. The flashback unfolded like a wound reopening, sharp and vivid, as James's blue eyes clouded with the weight of what he'd lost. Amara's poised presence across the table, her sapphire dress catching the candlelight, had stirred something he couldn't ignore, a need to understand how they'd unraveled. 6 years ago, their cozy Crestwood apartment was a haven of warmth, its walls adorned with Amara's sketches and bookshelves overflowing with her novels. Amara, her tightly coiled hair loose and framing her face, sat at the kitchen table, her dark eyes alight with excitement. A letter lay open before her, its edges worn from her nervous fingers. "James," she said, her voice trembling with hope, "I got an offer. A publisher wants my novel. They think it could be big." Her smile was wide, unguarded, a dreamer on the cusp of something real. James's sandy blonde hair, disheveled from a long day, barely glanced up from his laptop, where spreadsheets glowed with investment figures. "That's nice." He muttered, his tone flat, his focus on a deal that could elevate his firm. Amara's smile faltered, but she pressed on. "It's more than pleasant. I'd need to revise and travel for meetings. It's a chance to build something of my own." James sighed, closing his laptop with a snap. "Amara, now's not the time. I'm closing $1 million contract. We need stability, not fantasies." His words were sharp, cutting through her enthusiasm like a blade. Amara's shoulders slumped, her fingers tracing the letter's edge. "It's not a fantasy," she said softly. But James was already back to his emails, his silence louder than any argument. She stared at him, her heart sinking. She'd always loved his ambition, the fire in his blue eyes when he spoke of building an empire. But she hadn't realized how it would eclipse her dreams. She tucked the letter away, promising herself she'd try again later, but the moment marked the first crack in their foundation. Months passed, and the cracks widened. James's late nights became routine, his phone buzzing with messages he dismissed as work. Amara noticed the faint scent of perfume on his jacket, the way his smiles at events lingered too long on other women. She tried to talk to him, her voice steady despite the ache. "You're pulling away, James. I miss you." He waved her off, his tone impatient. "You're overreacting. I'm building our future." But the future he built was his alone, filled with boardrooms and fleeting admirations, leaving Amara to gather the pieces of their fading connection. One rainy evening, Amara stood in their living room, her dark eyes glistening as she held up her wedding ring, its gold dulled by time. "You're with someone else, aren't you?" she asked, her voice trembling but resolute. James, caught off guard, leaned against the counter, his face hardening. Instead of denying it, he shrugged. "If you were more interesting, I wouldn't need to look elsewhere." The words landed like a blow, stripping away the last of her hope. Amara's breath hitched, but she didn't cry. She slipped off the ring, set it on the table, and walked out, her footsteps echoing with finality. She left behind the woman who'd molded herself to fit his world, who'd silenced her dreams to amplify his. Amara vowed to rebuild in that moment, not for James, but for herself and their infant son, Noah. She'd carry the pain and strength, determined to become the woman she always knew she could be. The memory faded, and James blinked back to the gala, his throat tight. Amara's laughter across the table contrasted with the woman he'd broken, and the weight of his choices pressed harder than ever. The glow of the Lumière restaurant's chandeliers flickered in James Whitaker's mind, but the gala's elegance felt distant as his thoughts lingered on the past. The memory of Amara Brooks walking out her wedding ring left behind still burned. Now, as he watched her across the table, her sapphire dress catching the candlelight, her tightly coiled hair framing her poised smile, he saw a woman reborn. The Financial Elite Gala hummed around them, but James was lost in how Amara had become this force, confident, celebrated, untouchable. Her journey, forged in the ashes of their marriage, was a story of resilience he hadn't witnessed, but needed to understand. 3 years ago, Amara left their Crestwood apartment with a suitcase and their infant son, Noah. Her dark eyes were resolute, despite the ache in her chest. The divorce had left her with little, a modest settlement and a heart full of resolve. She moved into a small studio, its walls bare, but for Noah's crayon drawings. Nights were long, balancing Noah's needs with her ambitions. Determined to reclaim her voice, she enrolled in evening marketing courses at Crestwood Community College, juggling diaper changes and study sessions. Her professor, Sandra Ellis, a sharp-witted woman with a knack for spotting talent, saw Amara's gift for storytelling. Sandra told her, "You've got a spark handing back an essay on brand narratives. Turn it into fire." Amara seized the chance. She landed an entry-level role at Pinnacle Financial, a consultancy struggling to connect with clients. Her first project, a campaign for a struggling investment fund, was risky. She wove a narrative of legacy and trust, turning cold data into a story of families building futures. The campaign went viral, doubling the fund's investors. Her colleagues, initially skeptical, began seeking her input. Sandra, now a mentor, pushed her further. "Don't stop at one win," she said. "Build a name." Amara did, launching her firm Narrative Pulse within a year. Her innovative approach, blending storytelling with financial strategy, earned her keynote invitations and industry awards. Raising Noah was her anchor. At 2, he was diagnosed with autism, a revelation that brought challenges and clarity. His sensitivity to noise meant Amara learned to keep their home calm with soft music and dim lights. His love for patterns, she'd find him arranging toys in perfect rows, sparked her creativity. Therapy sessions with Dr. Maya Carter became a lifeline, teaching Amara how to support Noah's communication and routines. She'd sit with him, decoding his world, celebrating small victories like his first complete sentence. "Mom, stars shine," he'd said one night, pointing at the sky, and Amara's heart swelled. She poured that love into her work, mentoring young marketers from underrepresented backgrounds, giving them the chance she'd fought for. Balancing motherhood and her career wasn't easy. Nights when Noah struggled with change, pacing anxiously if plans shifted, tested her patience. She'd miss deadlines to comfort him, but she never gave up. Her firm grew, securing contracts with major funds, and her reputation soared. At the gala, her presence was proof of her triumph, not just professional, but personal. She'd built a life where she and Noah thrived without James's shadow. Back at the table, James's sandy blonde hair glinted as he shifted, his blue eyes fixed on Amara. She was mid-conversation, her voice steady as she answered a question about her latest project. "Startups need stories that resonate," she said. "I help them find their voice." A woman in a silver gown nodded. "Your mentorship program's inspiring, Amara. It's changing lives." Amara's smile was warm but guarded. "It's about opening doors," her eyes briefly meeting James's. He felt the weight of her words. She'd opened her doors, ones he'd tried to close. Lauren Mitchell, her auburn curls brushing her emerald dress, leaned toward James, her hazel eyes sharp. "She's impressive," she whispered, her tone laced with unease. James nodded, his throat tight. Amara's success wasn't just a career, but a rebuke to the man who'd underestimated her. The gala's glamour faded as he realized the cost of his neglect. Amara had risen from the ruins he'd left, and the woman before him was a stranger he longed to know again. The Lumière restaurant's grandeur seemed to dim as the Financial Elite Gala pressed on its chandeliers, casting long shadows across the polished tables. James Whitaker sat stiffly, his sandy blonde hair catching the candlelight. His blue eyes locked on Amara Brooks across the table. Her sapphire dress shimmered as she leaned back, her tightly coiled hair framing a serene smile that masked a storm James couldn't ignore. The clink of cutlery and murmurs of Crestwood's elite faded as Amara's presence consumed him. Her transformation, forged through years of resilience, as he'd just glimpsed in his memories, made his chest ache with awe and regret. Lauren Mitchell sensed the tension, her auburn curls brushing her emerald dress. Her hazel eyes darted between James and Amara, her fingers tightening around her wine glass. The table buzzed with light conversation, but Amara's earlier words about her mentorship program lingered, a testament to her strength. A silver-haired executive raised his glass. "To Amara, Thank you for redefining how we tell our stories." The table echoed the toast, but James's hand trembled as he lifted his glass, his mind elsewhere. Amara's dark eyes flicked toward him, catching his gaze. For a moment, the room stilled, the air thick with unspoken history. Then, as the main course roasted lamb with rosemary arrived, she leaned forward, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the noise. "James," she said, her tone calm but deliberate. "Noah asks why his father never calls." Money doesn't answer that question. The words landed like a blow, and James's fork clattered against his plate. Noah, their son. He hadn't seen him in years, and he hadn't thought to ask beyond sending checks. Lauren's head snapped up, her lips parting in surprise. The table fell silent, the other guests pretending to focus on their plates. James swallowed his throat dry. "Amara, he started, but she held up a hand, her expression unyielding. "Do you know his favorite book?" She pressed, her voice steady but laced with pain. "What calms him when he wakes up scared?" "Noah's autistic, James." "Did you even know that?" The revelation hit like a wave, drowning him in shame. Autism. He hadn't known, hadn't asked, hadn't been there. Lauren's hand grazed James's arm, but her touch felt distant, her hazel eyes wide with unease. "Autistic," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Amara's gaze didn't waver, her dark eyes boring into James. "She said you thought paying for schools was enough," her voice softening, but no less piercing. "But Noah needs a father, not a bank account." Each word was a mirror reflecting James's years chasing success while ignoring his son. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came, only silence, heavy and damning. The table's atmosphere shifted, the other guests resuming their chatter to mask the awkwardness. Amara leaned back, her composure intact, but her eyes held a flicker of the pain she'd carried alone. James's mind raced fragments of Noah's toddler years, his quiet stares, his love for stacking blocks surfacing like ghosts. Had there been signs he'd missed Amara's strength in raising their son alone and navigating challenges he couldn't fathom, made his life feel hollow. Lauren cleared her throat, her voice tight. "That's heavy," she said, glancing at James. "You never mentioned Noah." James's jaw clenched, his tie suddenly too tight. "It's complicated," he muttered, but the excuse felt weak. Amara's lips curved into a faint, bitter smile. "It's only tricky if you choose to make it so," she said, then turned to the executive beside her, seamlessly rejoining the conversation. The dismissal stung more than her words. She rose from the table, excusing herself to join another group, her steps deliberate, her sapphire dress trailing like a statement of independence. James stared at his plate, the lamb untouched. Lauren's hand rested on his, but her touch couldn't anchor him. Amara's words echoed Noah's autistic. "Did you even know?" And the weight of his absence crashed over him. He'd built an empire, but at what cost? The gala's glamour, once his domain, now felt like a stage for his failures. Lauren leaned closer, her voice low. She asked, but her tone held a trace of doubt, as if she sensed the chasm widening between them. James didn't answer, his eyes following Amara's figure across the room, a beacon of everything he'd lost. The Lumière restaurant's golden glow felt suffocating as the Financial Elite Gala carried on its clinking glasses and polished laughter, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside James Whitaker. His sandy blonde hair was slightly askew, his blue eyes clouded with the weight of Amara Brooks's words. Noah's autistic. "Did you even know?" The question echoed like a verdict, exposing the years he'd spent absent from his son's life. Across the room, Amara stood with a group of investors, her sapphire dress catching the light, her tightly coiled hair framing a composed smile that made James's chest ache. She was a beacon of strength, and he was a shadow of regret. Lauren Mitchell, her auburn curls brushing her emerald dress, sat beside him, her hazel eyes searching his face. "James, you're miles away," she said, her voice soft but tinged with frustration. He barely nodded, his fingers gripping the edge of the table. Amara's confrontation had stripped away his carefully curated facade, leaving him raw. The gala, once his stage, now felt like a courtroom, and he was guilty. Lauren followed his gaze to Amara, her lips tightening. "This is about her," she asked, her tone sharper now. James shook his head, but the lie felt hollow. It wasn't just Amara Noah, the son he'd failed. As the MC announced another award, James's mind spiraled. He saw flashes of Noah as a toddler, his tiny hands stacking blocks in perfect rows, his quiet focus a mystery James had never explored. Had autism been there? Then unnoticed, Amara had carried that truth alone while he chased deals and fleeting thrills. The shame was suffocating. He excused himself, muttering about needing air, and slipped out to the restaurant's terrace, the cool night breeze cutting through his navy suit. Crestwood's skyline glittered below, but its beauty felt empty. Alone, James pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling as he typed Amara Brooks into the search bar. Articles flooded the screen, praising her firm narrative pulse for revolutionizing financial marketing. One headline caught his eye: Amara Brooks, the storyteller, redefining wealth. He scrolled, his heart sinking as he read about her keynote speeches, her mentorship program, and her rise from obscurity to industry star. Then a photo stopped him cold: Amara in a park, her dark eyes warm beside a boy with expressive eyes, and James's tall frame. Noah, holding a notebook filled with colorful drawings, smiled faintly. The caption read, "My warrior teaches me love is acceptance." James's breath hitched. The word autism in the comments hit like a second blow. Noah was autistic, and James had never known because he'd never asked. He'd sent checks and paid for schools, but never called or visited. The weight of his absence crushed him. He clicked another link on Amara's professional page, where she wrote about storytelling's power to connect. One post mentioned Noah. "His patterns inspire me. Every challenge is a story of resilience." James's eyes stung. Amara had turned pain into purpose, while he'd built a life of empty accolades. Determined to understand, James searched for Noah's therapist, finding Dr. Maya Carter, an autism specialist. He booked an appointment for the next day, his heart pounding. He needed to know what he'd missed, what Noah needed. Back inside, the gala's noise felt distant as he returned to the table. Lauren's hand touched his, but her hazel eyes held doubt. "You're not okay," she said, more statement than question. James met her gaze, his voice low. "I haven't been for a long time." Her expression softened, but the gap between them widened. The next morning, James sat in Dr. Carter's office, its walls lined with colorful charts. The therapist, a woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, studied him. "So, you're Noah's father," she said, her tone neutral but probing. James nodded, his tie loosened. "I didn't know about his autism. I want to understand." Dr. Carter leaned forward. "Noah's brilliant, loves math, sees patterns everywhere. But loud noises overwhelm him, and change disrupts him. Amara's been his rock, teaching him to navigate his world." James's throat tightened. "And me? Did he ever ask about me?" Dr. Carter's gaze softened. "He did at first. Then he stopped." The words were a knife. James closed his eyes, the shame overwhelming. "I want to change that," he said, his voice breaking. Dr. Carter nodded. "Start with consistency. Noah needs actions, not promises." James left the office, and a resolve was formed. He'd been absent too long, but he could start now. Amara's strength had shown him what he'd lost, and could still fight for. The morning after the Financial Elite Gala, Crestwood streets were quiet, the autumn sun casting a soft glow over the town's manicured lawns. James Whitaker stood outside Noah's school. His navy coat unbuttoned, his sandy blonde hair ruffled by the breeze. His blue eyes scanned the iron gate, his heart pounding with a mix of nerves and resolve. Dr. Maya Carter's words echoed in his mind. Noah needs actions, not promises. The shame of his absence as a father, laid bare by Amara's confrontation, had ignited a fire in him. Today he'd start rebuilding what he'd neglected, starting with his son. Noah emerged from the school, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his dark eyes so like Amara's fixed on a notebook clutched in his hands. At 8 years old, he had James's tall frame, but moved with a deliberate rhythm, his fingers tapping a steady pattern against the notebook's edge. James took a deep breath and waved. "Hey, Noah," he called, his voice soft to avoid startling him. Noah glanced up, his expression cautious but curious, his hands pausing their rhythm. "Hi," he said, his voice quiet, his gaze flickering to the ground. James crouched to meet Noah's level, keeping his tone calm. "We could grab a hot chocolate." "Sounds good." Noah hesitated, his fingers resuming tapping a sign James now recognized as a way to self-soothe. After a moment, he nodded. "Okay." They walked to a nearby cafe, its warm lights contrasting with the crisp air. Inside, James chose a quiet corner, mindful of Noah's sensitivity to noise. Noah sat his backpack beside him and opened his notebook, revealing pages of intricate number patterns, grids of equations and doodles. "You like math, huh?" James asked, leaning forward, his eyes tracing the neat rows. Noah nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "Patterns make sense." He pointed to a grid. "This one's a Fibonacci sequence, but I changed it." James's brows lifted, impressed. He'd loved math as a kid, finding solace in its logic, but he'd never shared that with Noah. "Can I solve it?" he asked, his tone genuine. Noah's eyes widened, a spark of surprise breaking through his reserve. "Sure," he said, sliding the notebook across. They spent the hour trading puzzles, James scribbling answers, while Noah watched, his fingers tapping less frantically. When James solved a tricky sequence, Noah's lips curved into a small smile, quickly hidden. "You're good," Noah said, his voice soft but warm. James's heart swelled. It was the first connection, fragile but real. He noticed Noah's subtle habits. He rocked slightly when thinking, and avoided eye contact when a loud laugh from another table startled him. James lowered his voice, keeping the moment steady. Back at school the next day, James was there at 300 sharp, respecting Noah's need for routine. Dr. Carter had warned him about Noah's struggle with change, and he wouldn't falter. Noah emerged, clutching his notebook, and his steps were lighter this time. "Hot chocolate again," James offered, and Noah nodded, a faint smile flickering. Over the days, their routine grew: cafe visits, math challenges, quiet conversations. Noah began sharing more, like how he loved sorting his pencils by color, or how loud buses made him cover his ears. James listened, absorbing every detail, learning his son's world. One afternoon, Noah hesitated before getting into James's car. "You'll come tomorrow, right?" he asked, his dark eyes searching James's face. The question carried years of absence, and James's throat tightened. "Every day, Noah," he said, his voice firm. "I promise." Noah nodded, his fingers tapping a slower rhythm, as if testing the words. James drove him home, glancing at Amara's apartment building, its windows glowing. He imagined her inside, her tightly coiled hair loose after a long day, and wondered if she'd notice his efforts. Lauren Mitchell's texts had gone unanswered, her auburn curls and hazel eyes a fading memory. James knew their connection was unraveling, but his focus was here with Noah. Amara's strength had shown him what he'd lost, and Noah's slight smile was a chance to rebuild. He wasn't the man who'd walked away anymore, but proving it would take more than promises. As he parked, Noah clutched his notebook, his voice soft. "Tomorrow's a new pattern," he said. James grinned. "Can't wait, champ." The road ahead was long, but James felt he was on it for the first time. The Crestwood afternoon was crisp, the autumn leaves swirling across the quiet streets as James Whitaker parked his sleek sedan outside Noah's school. His sandy blonde hair caught the sunlight, and his blue eyes were steady focused on the iron gate where his son would soon appear. The routine of picking Noah up at 3:00 sharp had become his anchor, a promise kept after years of absence. Amara Brooks's words from the gala. "Noah needs a father, not a bank account," still echoed, fueling his resolve. The memory of Amara, her sapphire dress glowing her tightly coiled hair, framing her fierce composure, lingered like a challenge he was determined to meet. James checked his phone inside the car, ignoring a string of unread texts from Lauren Mitchell. Her auburn curls and hazel eyes, once a vibrant part of his life, felt distant now. His focus was on Noah, on the fragile bond they were building through math puzzles and quiet cafe moments. But Lauren's absence since the gala weighed on him. She'd been silent, her usual spark dimmed. James smiled as Noah emerged, clutching his notebook, his dark eyes flickering with recognition. "Ready for hot chocolate, champ?" Noah nodded, his fingers tapping a steady rhythm, a small smile breaking through. Later at their usual cafe, Noah scribbled a new pattern, his voice soft but eager. "This one's harder," he said, sliding the notebook toward James. The challenge, a complex sequence of numbers, lit a spark in James, who leaned in, pen in hand. "Let's crack it," he said, matching Noah's quiet intensity. Their tentative laughter filled the corner booth, a stark contrast to the gala's hollow glamour. James notices Noah's subtle rocking, his way of processing excitement, and adjusts his tone to keep the moment calm. That evening, James dropped Noah off at Amara's apartment, the windows glowing warmly. He lingered by the car, hoping to glimpse her, but only Noah waved before disappearing inside. Back at his sleek loft, the silence was jarring. His phone buzzed. Lauren. Her message was brief. "We need to talk. My place tonight." James's stomach tightened. He'd been avoiding this, but he owed her clarity. He drove to her downtown condo, its modern decor reflecting her vibrant energy. Lauren opened the door, her emerald dress replaced by a casual sweater, her auburn curls loose. "You've been distant," she said, her hazel eyes searching his face as they sat on her leather couch. Her voice was calm but firm, cutting through the tension. "Since the gala, it's like you're somewhere else." James ran a hand through his sandy blonde hair. His tie loosened. "I'm sorry, Lauren. It's not you, it's me." Her lips twitched a wry smile. "That's a cliché, but I get it. It's Amara. And Noah." James knotted his throat tight. "I've been a terrible father. I'm trying to fix that." Lauren leaned back, crossing her arms. "I saw it at the gala, how you looked at her. She's not just your ex. She's your unfinished story." Her words were sharp but not cruel, her gaze softening. "I want someone who's all in, James. You're not, and that's okay. I deserve more than being a placeholder." James winced, her honesty stinging. He said you're not a placeholder, but his voice lacked conviction. Lauren stood, her curls catching the lamplight. "I'm moving on. You should too, with what matters." She walked him to the door, her hand brushing his in a final gesture. "Good luck, James," she said, her smile bittersweet. "Noah's lucky to have you trying." The door closed softly, and James stood in the hallway, the weight of her words settling. Lauren's departure was a clean break, freeing him to focus on his family. He drove home, the city lights blurring his mind on Noah's smile and Amara's strength. He wasn't the man who'd chased fleeting thrills anymore. He was a father, and maybe, just maybe, he could be more. Back at his loft, James sat at his desk, the glow of his laptop casting shadows. He opened his calendar, canceling a high-profile investor meeting to ensure he'd be at Noah's school tomorrow. His empire could wait. His son couldn't. Amara's face flashed in his mind, her poised defiance, her unwavering love for Noah. He wanted to prove himself to her, but first he had to prove it to Noah. The road was long, but each step felt right, a path toward redemption he hadn't known he needed. The Crestwood evening was fabulous, the autumn air carrying the scent of fallen leaves as James Whitaker stood outside Noah's school, his navy coat flapping in the breeze. His sandy blonde hair was neatly combed, but his blue eyes betrayed a restless edge. Picking up Noah at 3:00 sharp had become his lifeline, a daily commitment to the son he'd once neglected. Amara Brooks's words at the gala, "Noah needs a father," still drove him, her image vivid. Her sapphire dress, tightly coiled hair, dark eyes fierce with truth. Lauren Mitchell's departure had cleared his path, but a new uncertainty gnawed at him, Amara's life beyond their shared past. Noah emerged, his backpack slung low, his dark eyes scanning his notebook's number patterns. His fingers tapped a steady rhythm, a familiar comfort. Hot chocolate. James asked, his voice soft to match Noah's calm. Noah nodded, a faint smile flickering, and they headed to their cafe. Over steaming mugs, Noah shared a new puzzle, a grid of prime numbers twisted into a spiral. "Try it," he said, his voice quiet but eager. James dove in their pens, scratching in sync, Noah's subtle rocking a sign of engagement. "You're tricky," James teased, earning a rare chuckle from Noah, a sound that warmed him more than the drink. Driving Noah home. James glanced at Amara's apartment building, its warm lights beckoning. He'd hoped to see her and share Noah's progress, but she was often at work, her firm narrative pulse demanding long hours. Noah hopped out waving, and James lingered, his heart heavy. Back at his loft, the silence was stark, broken only by his phone's buzz. Amara's social media notification caught his eye, a smiling photo of her smiling at a wine bar, a glass raised. The caption read, "Grateful for good company." His stomach twisted. Company? Who was she with? The seed of doubt grew. The next day, dropping Noah off, James noticed a man's jacket hanging by Amara's door, a dark leather piece too large for her. His pulse quickened. Was she seeing someone? Noah, oblivious, chattered about a school project, but James's mind raced. At the cafe, Noah mentioned that Mom went out last night. Aunt Tessa watched me. James forced a smile, his voice casual. "Oh, where'd she go?" Noah shrugged, his fingers tapping. "Dunno. She was happy, though." The word happy stung, sparking an irrational fear. Someone else making Amara smile, maybe even meeting Noah. James couldn't sleep that night, and his loft's sleek lines felt cold. He opened Amara's profile again, scrolling through recent posts, a book on her desk, a city skyline at dusk, nothing overt. But the absence of details fueled his paranoia. Was she hiding a new relationship? The thought of another man in Noah's life, a stepfather, a role James was claiming, clawed at him. He imagined confronting her, demanding answers, but stopped himself. The old James would have stormed in, entitled and impulsive. The man he was becoming knew better. Amara owed him nothing, and Noah deserved his focus, not his jealousy. The next pickup was tense. James arrived early, his hands gripping the wheel. Noah climbed in, his notebook open, But James's eyes strayed to Amara's building. A man's laughter drifted from an open window, deep and unfamiliar. His chest tightened, his fingers whitening on the steering wheel. Was this the good company he wanted to march up to see for himself? But Noah's voice broke through. "You're quiet," Noah said, his dark eyes curious, his tapping pausing. James forced a grin. "Just thinking, champ. Let's solve that puzzle." Noah nodded, but his gaze lingered, sensing the shift. At the cafe, James focused on Noah, pushing the jealousy aside. Noah's latest pattern, a maze of odd numbers, demanded attention, and their quiet collaboration steadied him. "You're getting better," Noah said, a rare compliment, his slight smile a lifeline. James ruffled Noah's hair, careful not to overwhelm him. "Thanks to you," he said, meaning it. As he drove Noah home, the laughter from Amara's window echoed in his mind. But he didn't ask. He'd prove himself through actions, not demands, even if the fear of losing Amara forever burned inside him. The Crestwood dusk painted the sky in hues of amber, the autumn chills settling over the town as James Whitaker drove to Noah's school. His sandy blonde hair was neatly combed, but his blue eyes flickered unease, haunted by the laughter he'd heard from Amara Brooks's apartment and the man's jacket by her door. The fear that Amara had moved on, perhaps with someone already part of Noah's life, gnawed at him. Yet his daily ritual of picking up Noah at 3 sharp grounded him, a testament to his resolve to be the father he'd failed to be. Amara's image, her sapphire dress, tightly coiled hair, and fierce dark eyes lingered, a reminder of what he was fighting for. Noah emerged, his backpack slung low, his dark eyes fixed on his notebook of number patterns. His fingers tapped a steady rhythm, a habit James now cherished. "Hot chocolate?" James asked, his voice soft to keep Noah calm. Noah nodded, a small smile breaking through, and they headed to their cafe. Over puzzles, Noah's voice grew animated, describing a new sequence he'd crafted. James listened, his heart swelling at Noah's quiet joy, but his mind drifted to Amara. Was someone else sharing her laughter now? He pushed the thought aside, focusing on Noah's latest challenge, a grid of interlocking primes. That evening, James dropped Noah off, lingering by Amara's building. The jacket was gone, but the memory of the laughter lingered. He drove home, his sleek loft feeling emptier than ever. Determined to bridge the gap, he texted Amara, "Can we have dinner tomorrow? You, me, Noah, and whoever's with you." His heart raced. Inviting the unknown company was a risk, but he needed clarity. Amara's reply was swift. "Sure. 700. Your place." Relief mixed with dread. Who would she bring? The next day, James prepared meticulously, his navy suit swapped for a casual sweater. He canceled a key investor call, prioritizing the dinner, a shift from the career-driven man he'd been. He set the table with Noah's favorite mac and cheese, the aroma filling his loft. He hung a mural of family photos on the wall, Noah as a baby. Amara's warm smile, a rare shot of James holding Noah. A handwritten note read, "Family is forever." It was a gesture, a hope for something new. At 700, the doorbell rang. James opened it to find Amara, her dark eyes cautious, her tightly coiled hair loose, and framing her face a simple blue dress hugging her frame. Noah bounced beside her, clutching his notebook. Behind them stood a tall man with a familiar grin, Marcus, Amara's brother. James's shoulders sagged with relief, the jealousy dissolving like mist. "Marcus," he exclaimed, shaking his hand. "Been too long." Marcus clapped his shoulder. "Good to see you, man. Heard you're stepping up for Noah." James nodded, his throat tight. Inside, the dinner unfolded with warmth. Noah showed Marcus his latest pattern, his fingers tapping excitedly. Amara watched her, smile soft but guarded. Over mac and cheese, Marcus shared his story. His marriage was faltering, and he'd been staying with Amara to clear his head. "She's been my rock," he said, glancing at her. James seized the moment, pulling out his phone. "Let's call your wife, Marcus. Maybe it's not too late." He dialed, and a woman's hesitant voice answered. Marcus's face lit up, and he stepped away, the conversation a quiet hope. Amara's eyes met James's, a flicker of surprise breaking her reserve. "You did that for him?" she said, her voice low. James nodded. "He deserves a chance like I do." Noah tugged Amara's sleeve, grinning. "We're a family, right?" The word hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Amara's smile wavered, her dark eyes searching James's face. "Maybe," she said softly, the first crack in her armor. The mural glowed behind them, a silent promise. James felt a spark of hope. He was proving himself not just to Noah, but to her. As they cleared the plates, Noah's laughter filled the room, Marcus's call ending with a hopeful tone. Amara lingered, her fingers brushing the mural. "This is new," she said, her voice quiet. James stepped closer. "So are we, if you'll let us be." Her gaze held his, a mix of doubt and warmth. The night ended with Noah's hug, Marcus's gratitude, and Amara's tentative nod, a step toward trust, fragile but real. The Crestwood evening was serene, the golden glow of James Whitaker's loft casting warmth across the room as the family dinner lingered in its final moments. The table, scattered with empty plates of Noah's favorite mac and cheese, hummed with the afterglow of laughter. James's sandy blonde hair caught the soft light, his blue eyes fixed on Amara Brooks, who stood by the mural of family photos, her fingers tracing the handwritten note, "Family is forever." Her blue dress hugged her frame, her tightly coiled hair falling loose, and her dark eyes held a cautious warmth that made James's heart race. Noah's giggles echoed as he showed his uncle Marcus another number pattern, their bond, a bright thread in the evening's tapestry. Marcus, his grin wide, stepped back from the table, his phone call with his wife still fresh. A spark of hope reignited thanks to James's gesture. "You've outdone yourself, man," he said, clapping James's shoulder. "This night it's special." Noah tugged Marcus's sleeve, his dark eyes sparkling. "Show Uncle Marcus your room," he urged, pulling him toward the stairs. James and Amara were left alone, the air thick with unspoken words. The mural glowed behind them, and photos of Noah as a baby, Amara's radiant smile, and James's rare moments of fatherhood were a silent testament to what they'd lost and could rebuild. Amara crossed her arms, her gaze steady, but softer than at the gala. "You're different, James," she said, her voice low, almost testing. "This mural is helping Marcus. It's not the man I left." James stepped closer, his throat tight. "I was wrong, Amara. I lost you, lost Noah chasing things that didn't matter. I want to fix it." Her eyes flickered a storm of doubt and hope. "I want to believe you," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I'm scared. You broke us once." The confession hung between them, raw and unguarded, her vulnerability a crack in the armor she'd worn for years. James held her gaze, his voice steady. "I know I don't deserve your trust yet, but I'm here every day for Noah and for you, if you'll let me." He reached for her hand, his touch gentle, and she didn't pull away. Her fingers trembled, her dark eyes searching his face. "I still love you," she whispered, the words slipping out like a secret she hadn't meant to share. James's breath caught his heart pounding. "I never stopped loving you," he said, his voice breaking. "I was just too foolish to show it." Before Amara could respond, Noah's voice rang from upstairs. "Mom, Dad, see?" They exchanged a glance, a silent agreement to pause the moment. Upstairs, Noah's room was a haven in his world, shelves lined with math books, a whiteboard covered in patterns. He pointed proudly to a new grid. He said, "I made this for us." his fingers tapping lightly, his smile wide. Amara knelt beside him, her eyes glistening. "It's perfect, Noah," she said, ruffling his hair. James watched his chest swelling at the sight of their bond, one he was starting to share. Marcus joined them, his grin softening. "You've got a good kid," he said, nudging James. "And maybe a shot at something more." Amara's gaze flicked to James, a tentative smile breaking through. As they returned downstairs, Noah darted ahead, leaving them alone again. James took a risk, pulling Amara into a gentle hug. She stiffened, then relaxed her head, resting against his chest. His familiar scent stirring memories of better days. "I'm not asking for everything now," he whispered. "Just a chance." She pulled back, her dark eyes sparkling. She said, "One day at a time," her voice firm but warm. Noah bounded back, squeezing between them, his arms wrapping around both. "We're a family," he declared, his voice bright, his tapping fingers stilling in their embrace. James and Amara laughed, their eyes meeting over Noah's head. James leaned in his lips, brushing hers in a quiet kiss, full of promise and unspoken vows. Amara didn't pull away, her hand resting on his cheek, a moment of surrender to the love that had never entirely faded. The loft felt like home again, fragile but real. As they said goodbye, Marcus winked at James. "Keep this up, brother." Amara lingered at the door, her blue dress swaying. "Thank you, James," she said, her smile soft for tonight. He nodded, his heart full. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid. He'd prove himself not with grand gestures, but with the steady love Noah and Amara deserved. James stood in the quiet as their car pulled away, the mural glowing behind him, a beacon of hope. Will Amara and James rebuild their family, or should she guard her heart? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm dying to know your take. If this ending's got you emotional, hit that like button to celebrate their journey. Subscribe and tap the bell for more stories that tug at the heart. You won't want to miss what's next.